The 24-25 season is just around the corner, and in this video, I'm going to give you some bold, some hot, some spicy Tottenham predictions for the season ahead. Are we going to win the league? Could we? Who knows? Probably not. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. In this video, I'm going to talk through who I think our best player is going to be, where we're going to finish in the league, our best breakthrough star, our best young player, our top scorer, our best signing, and we're also going to answer the question, are Tottenham going to break their trophy drought and win the Europa League this season? Sing it with me. Whoa! Whoa! Right, let's get straight into it. Where are Spurs going to finish in the Premier League this season? I think Spurs have got a very good chance of finishing in the top four, potentially pushing for top three. I think Manchester City and Arsenal are very strong this year, so I think a title race is probably out of the question, although Ange has got very lofty ambitions for the club. And look, we haven't done most of our business yet, so that could affect things slightly. But I think Spurs could definitely finish in the top four this summer. I think a lot of people are writing us off because they saw a very inconsistent Tottenham towards the back end of last season, one that was shipping goals. But I think we're going to continue to get better and develop under Ange Postecoglou. This rebuild, this new era under Ange is still in its embryonic stage. This is the third transfer window that we've had. And yes, we need to bring quality in to make sure we can get a top four finish. But our business is not done. If Spurs can add a top quality striker, which we'll come on to talk about, another winger, and strengthen that defensive depth, there is no reason why Spurs can't finish fourth. And in my opinion, push Liverpool for that third spot. We score a lot of goals. We play some of the best football in the league as well. And this team is still gelling. We've got young players to add to that as well. Young players that play without fear that I think are going to play a big part in this season ahead for Spurs. So I think we're going to finish fourth. Guys, with all of these predictions, make sure you let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Get your predictions in. I'm also going to be doing a video next week where I react to some of your Tottenham predictions for next season. So make sure to get them in. Send them to me on Twitter as well. And let's get into best player then. Who's going to be Spurs' player of the season for the 24-25 season? Last year for me, it was Christian Romero. It was very close between our two centre-backs, Romero and Van der Ven, who both had outstanding seasons. And I think it's going to be one of them again this year. And I think I'm going to edge Christian Romero just like I did last year. Look, Mickey Van der Ven had an excellent season last year, and I think they complement each other so well. It's so hard to individually rate them and say who's better, who's not. But I think Christian Romero edges it for me. I think he's an unbelievable centre-back. He's one of the top five, potentially top three centre-backs in the Premier League, one of the best in Europe, and he's going to show everyone that this year. He's determined to win a trophy for Tottenham this season. He said it himself. And I think if we do, he is going to have a massive part to play in that. Like I said, honourable mentions go to Mickey Van der Ven. I think Son Heung-Min, although he's 32 years old, I still think we're going to see a very productive season from him next year as well. And potentially one of the new signings as well. Who knows? Someone who could come through in the latter stages of this transfer window could really transform this Tottenham side and win Player of the Year. But for now, I'm going to go for Christian Romero. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Next up, we've got Breakthrough Star. Now, this kind of doubles up as a Breakthrough Star / Young Player of the Year award. I'm going to go, it's very hard to pick between two players. I'm going to go for Lucas Bergvall. I think it could definitely be Mikey Moore. Mikey Moore has just signed a new long-term deal at Spurs and earned a permanent promotion to the first team. I think we're going to get minutes for Mikey Moore in the Europa League and in the Premier League next year. But if we're talking someone that I think could genuinely establish themselves as a regular starter by the end of the season, I think it's Lucas Bergvall. I think we've seen an insane level of quality from Bergvall in pre-season so far, and yes, it's pre-season. You have to take that with a pinch of salt, but I think he's ready for the Premier League. Again, in that midfield, he plays without fear. He looks so comfortable on the ball. If he loses it, it doesn't matter. He's going to go and win it back. He's so silky. He presses really well. He's an all-round combative midfielder that just glides across the pitch. And I think James Maddison should be worried looking over his shoulder at Lucas Bergvall, who could slot right in to that position in the midfield. He could play anywhere. He could play as the 6, he could play as the 8. He's so comfortable in all of the positions, and that's why I think he could establish himself as a guaranteed starter by the end of the season. I think some Spurs fans have come out and talked about the fact that he should maybe be loaned out. Not a chance. I do not see that for Lucas Bergvall next year. I think there is a genuine chance that he wins our Young Player of the Season award, and I think he establishes himself as a regular starter by the end of next season. He's going to get a lot of minutes, a lot more minutes than I think many Spurs fans thought going into this pre-season, but he has impressed so much. I'm so excited to see Lucas Bergvall play Premier League football, and I think he is a genuine contender to start that first game of the season against Leicester. Now then, best signing. Right, Spurs haven't done a lot of business yet. So far, we've brought through Archie Gray, we've signed Timo Werner on a loan deal, and obviously Lucas Bergvall has joined the club after he was signed in January. But I'm filming this with about 3 weeks to go before the transfer window slams shut, and Tottenham have got a lot of business left to do. The main positions we're obviously linked with and obviously need to strengthen is that striker position and a top-class winger as well. And if Spurs were to bring through someone like Dominic Solanke, who we've been heavily linked with in the last few days, go and check out the video on my channel where I broke down why I think Dominic Solanke is the perfect fit for Tottenham. And for that winger spot, I think it could be someone like Pedro Neto. Obviously, there have been links to a Barry Eze all summer, but that looks like a very difficult deal to do, given the huge nature of his release clause and Palace demanding a lot of that money up front. They're obviously looking like they're going to lose Mark Gay as well. That strengthens their bargaining position. And if you said to me now, which 3 players do you think Spurs are going to sign before the end of the window? I think Spurs are going to bring in Dominic Solanke. I think there's a very good chance we bring in Pedro Neto and a young left back as well. Someone like Bradley Locko, someone like Patrick Dorgu, or even someone like Kyle Walker-Peters potentially. But Spurs need a number 9, arguably more than any of those positions. And I think Dominic Solanke would be an incredible signing. Obviously, it remains to be seen what's going to happen with Richarlison. I think if Richarlison stays and Solanke competes alongside him, I think Spurs' forward options are looking much brighter than they were last year. I think Dominic Solanke is the perfect fit for the system. I think he'd come in, he'd hit the ground running, scored 19 goals in the Premier League last year for Bournemouth. And although I think Pedro Neto transforms our attack and makes us so much more dangerous than we were last year as well, I think I'm going to give signing of the season to Dominic Solanke. But hopefully this doesn't age badly and we don't end up signing Jonathan David or Santiago Jimenez on deadline day. But I think Spurs are pretty confident at getting this deal done, and I think I'm pretty confident that Spurs are going to do it as well. So I'm going to say that Dominic Solanke is going to be Tottenham's signing of the season. That leads me on nicely to top scorer. Who is going to be Tottenham's top goal scorer for the 24-25 Premier League season? I think with the volume of open play chances that Tottenham create, the striker in this system is going to score a bucket load of goals. It's just about staying fit. We saw with Richarlison last year, his goals per game ratio was excellent. I think he scored 11 goals in 19 or 20 Premier League games and showed how dangerous he could be for Spurs when he was on the pitch. But if Dominic Solanke is able to stay fit for most of the season, I genuinely think there's a 25-30 goal season in all competitions for Solanke next year. Spurs create a bucket load of chances from those wide positions. It's just about the striker being in the right area. We saw that with Son Heung-Min last year, who scored a bucket load of goals. Richarlison, as I mentioned, his goals per game ratio was very strong when he was fit. And I think Solanke in the Premier League, I think he's going to better the tally that he got for Bournemouth last season. I think he's going to get a 20-goal Premier League season, and I think he is going to be our top scorer in all competitions. But I think it's going to be shared around a lot as well. I think Johnson's going to pop up with 10 goals. I think Kulusevski playing that central position maybe at times as well could pop up with 10 goals potentially as well. And of course Son Heung-Min, and of course Richarlison, who looks like he's going to stay at the club. I'm so interested to see how this ages. Obviously we've learnt the news today that Richarlison, he doesn't want to go to Saudi Arabia. He very much wants to stay and compete at Spurs. And I think having Richarlison and Solanke competing with each other, thriving off that competition, is only good for both of them. Now, top assister. Who's going to get the most assists for Tottenham this season? I think it's going to be Son Heung-Min. We mentioned with the striker, the amount of chances that they get from crosses into the box from those wide positions being unleashed in behind, and those cutbacks are so deadly for Spurs. We saw it with Timo Werner last year, we saw it with Brennan Johnson as well, but I just think Son Heung-Min is more consistent from his delivery from those wide positions. I think Son Heung-Min is going to play predominantly on the left as well, with Dominic Solanke coming in and Richarlison potentially staying at the club too. I think Dejan Kulusevski could be a shout for this as well. James Maddison could potentially be a shout from this as well, with those chances created, especially if Kulusevski plays in a central position. But I think with Maddison and Kulusevski, what we're going to see a lot of next season is that pass before the assist, you know, the pre-assist, that ball that breaks the lines in behind the defence, that allows the winger to get across and cut the ball back for the striker to score. James Maddison did that a lot last year. A goal that came to my head straight away was the first goal against Liverpool in that home victory, where he played that ball through to Richarlison, who knocked it across for Sonny to tap it in. Again, I'm thinking about Kulusevski in that right-hand side in number 8 position, threading the ball through to Brennan Johnson to get that cut back across. I think their chance creation levels are going to be through the roof. I just don't necessarily think their assist numbers are going to be that high in comparison to the wingers. That said, I think Pedro Porro is probably a decent shout for this as well, but I'm going to nail my colours to the mast on our captain, Son Heung-Min. Now, Unsung Hero. Who is going to be Tottenham's Unsung Hero for the season this year? I think there's a lot of players that this could be. I think there's a lot of players in our squad that don't necessarily get the credit that they deserve for the hard yards they put in, for the consistent level of performances that they do put across. And although they might not be world beaters, they bring something to Tottenham that those other players in the squad don't. And I think the prime example of that is Dejan Kulusevski. I think Pat Matasar is a decent shout for this. I actually think Richarlison is a decent shout for this as well. But I think the versatility that Dejan Kulusevski offers is massive for our squad. Again, he played through the middle for the most part of pre-season as that number 9. And I think versatility is so important in modern football. I think his work rate levels are huge as well. He is the best presser in this team. He is actually a leader when he's out on that pitch. He might be still quite young. He might not be the most vocal. But in terms of the way he works so hard and the way he presses, I think Dejan Kulusevski is one of the most underappreciated players in our squad. And I think he's going to show that quality next year. I think he's going to be huge in our Europa League run, because I think we could get quite far. Are we going to win it? Who knows? Stay tuned to the end for my prediction on that. But I think I'm going to go for Kulusevski as my unsung hero. Let me know yours in the comments. Now, surprise star. This kind of goes hand in hand a little bit with that unsung hero award, but I'm going to give this to someone who I think their stock right now isn't at its highest. He had a lot of criticism last year. I think we're going to see a lot more consistency from him next year, and I think people are going to remember how important he actually is to us when he plays at his best. And that's Yves Bissouma. I think a lot of the criticism that Yves Bissouma gets isn't fair. I think his performances towards the back end of last year were good. I think he was starting to get back near to that level. I think we've seen a really good level from him in pre-season so far. And I think with Bissouma, so much of it is mental, right? So much of it is up here. I think it's a concentration thing. I think it's a confidence thing. Look at last year, that red card against Luton. His performances fell off a cliff for a period of the season after that as well. But I think once you've got a confident Yves Bissouma, and if you can keep him confident, believing in himself for the whole season, it helps you iron out those silly mistakes. It helps you be less vulnerable in transition. We know we conceded a lot of goals from counter-attacks last year, which I don't necessarily think was all related to that number 6 position. I think a lot of criticism came Yves Bissouma's way last year that wasn't necessarily fair, but I think people had it out for him after those few months, after he set the standard so high at the start of the season. So that's why I think Yves Bissouma is going to be our surprise star this season. Now, I hate to do this category, but I've got to have an underperformer or a flop in here, and I actually think that's going to be James Maddison. I really hope I'm wrong, and I really don't want to spend this video digging James Maddison out, but it's a bit like Yves Bissouma. A lot of that inconsistency from James Maddison last year came from a lack of confidence, which I think we saw in himself after the injury. Ange Postecoglou showed that he wasn't afraid to drop him when the levels weren't there towards the end of the season. And look, I really hope I'm wrong, but I am a bit worried about James Maddison and how he's going to react to the stiff competition that he faces in that midfield for this season. You've got Lucas Bergvall, who I mentioned I think could be a starter in that first game. Dejan Kulusevski has spent virtually the whole pre-season training as a striker or as a number 10 position, playing centrally. And I do worry that I think we're going to see another inconsistent season from James Maddison. I don't necessarily take too much out of what we saw in pre-season. I think he's going to start the season well, but I do think there's a risk we see that inconsistent level throughout the season again with James Maddison, which is why, and I don't want to do this, I'm going to put him as my underperformer. But again, it's just because he set that bar so high. Like Bissouma, those first 10 games of last season, he was one of the best playmakers in the league. That's why there were those comparisons to Bruno Fernandes, Odegaard, and even Kevin De Bruyne. He earned those with his performances. Look, I hope I'm wrong on this. Let me know yours in the comments below. Who you think is going to be Spurs' biggest underperformer this season? And finally, are Spurs going to end their trophy drought this year? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes, all right? I genuinely believe Spurs got a very good chance of winning that Europa League. I think we've got a lot of good young talent that we're going to see play in those group stage games, mixed with the quality of the first 11 as well. I think once you get through to that knockout stage, obviously the game's hardened, but there's no dropouts from the Champions League this year with the new format. Spurs have never had a better chance to win it. They do face competition, of course, with some good teams in that tournament. But I think Spurs get to Bilbao, and I think Spurs win it. I really, really do. I think Spurs are going to have a brilliant European run this year. If that means that we sacrifice that top 4 place, I do not care. Because nothing would make me happier than seeing Richarlison score the winner in Bilbao for Tottenham in that Europa League final. We will be there. Sing it with me. Whoa, whoa, whoa. This is me lifting the trophy. We're going to do that, all right? We're going to lift that European trophy, that Europa League in Bilbao. I don't care if this comes back to bite me, right? We can all have a bit of fun with the predictions in pre-season. Let me know yours in the comments below. Like I said, next week I'm going to do a video reacting to your predictions for next season, so make sure to get them in the comments. And I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everyone who watches these videos, who likes them, who is subscribed to the channel. The support over the last few weeks has not gone unnoticed. We've gone from 1,000 subscribers to nearly 3K just like that, and it's all because of you guys. And I want to thank you so much for watching and tuning into all the videos. And look, if the season goes half as well as I predicted it to in this video, we are in for another fun year of supporting Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham Hotspur up and down the country. I know I will be there. I cannot wait to get back to White Hart Lane. Hopefully we're going to go on a European tour as well, and hopefully I'll see you all in Bilbao. Up the Spurs.